Hello and welcome to C# Fundamentals with Wisej.net. In this video, we'll be learning about events, delegates, and event handlers.
And I have a diagram prepared here to give you a visual idea of what's going on. So on the left, we have the event, which is what sort of kicks off this whole thing. It could be something like a mouse click, a button click, a combo box click, anything like that. It's just something that happens that triggers something else to happen. So whenever the event happens, we have our delegate, which connects the event to the event handler. And then we have our event handler, which has the code for what happens after the event is fired. So for example, maybe the event is a button click, and the event handler has code to show an alert box. And the event will send information through the delegate to the event handler in the form of EventArgs. So let me show this animation. The EventArgs will go from the event to the event handler, and the delegate is what connects the event to the event handler. So let's go ahead and see this in action in code. So here I have a blank Wisej.net 4 application. Let's go ahead and add a button. And let's talk about events. So right now if I click on this button, I can go to properties, and I can go to the lightning bolt for events, and we can see right here we have the click event. If I double click on that, it will attach a handler to that event. So let's go back for a second here. This is the click event, and now that I've created the handler, this is the handler. If I look at page1.cs, this is the handler. So this is what is called when the event is fired, right? The event tells this method to be called, essentially. Let's go ahead and add some code. So we will just show an alert box. And so you'll notice there's one thing that I haven't talked about yet. So we have our event, we have our button click event, and we have our event handler, our button1_click, but what connects them is the delegate. And I did not actually manually create a delegate. It was automatically created for me. So we're in page1.cs. If you click on this little thing here to expand it, you'll see there's a page1.designer.cs. And if you right click on that, view code, we can see the designer code. So this is automatically created whenever I do things in the designer. If I expand this down here, let's look. So there's our button, right? So it's got a location, name, size, all that stuff. Our text is button 1, and here is where the magic happens. So on the left here, this is our event, button1.click, and we are attaching a delegate. So our delegate is this system.event handler, and then over here, this, you'll recall, is our event handler, button1.click. So again, event, delegate, event handler. So now that we've gotten an overview of events and delegates, let's dive into a simple code example. First, we're going to create an event. So I'm just going to say public event handler my event. And let's break down this line of code. So this is just a keyword that tells us we're creating an event. Pretty simple. This is the type of event. Event handler is the simplest one. It's just an event that doesn't return anything and has a method signature with object sender and EventArgs E. This is actually a delegate, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And this is the event name, in this case, my event. So talking about event handler, so again, it's a delegate. You can see the definition here, public delegate void event handler. And you notice some things here from this definition. The parameters are object sender and EventArgs E, and it returns void. So that means that whatever method, whatever event handler we use for this event, it must have the parameters object sender EventArgs E, and it must return void, right? The delegate signature has to match the signature of the event handler. So let's go ahead and create that event handler. And here's our event handler. We have, again, object sender EventArgs E, and you can see we're returning void. And then as far as the code, all it does is just show an alert box. We're just keeping it simple. So we have our event, we have our event handler, and now we just need to connect them, right? We need to create a delegate and actually connect those two things together. So let's go ahead and do that in the page one constructor. We're going to say my event plus equals new event handler, my event handler. There we go, and we have connected these. So here we have our event. This is our delegate, and this is our event handler. And the event handler is this here, this method, right? So this is great. If I run this, however, nothing's going to happen because I'm not actually firing the event. There's nothing that causes the event to go off, that causes the event to happen. So in order to do that, we need to invoke the event. And I'll go ahead and just invoke it in the page one constructor just so we can see what happens. So we can do my event dot invoke, and we're just going to send it the parameters. So this will be our object sender. So this is just our reference to page one, just the current context. And then we're just going to send it a new EventArgs, because remember, EventArgs is empty. So we don't actually need to put anything inside of these parentheses here. Okay, so let's go ahead and run that. And you can see it says hello, right? So our event is fired once. If you want to fire the event a couple more times, we can go ahead and create a button. I'll just double click on that. There's our button click event. And let's go ahead and invoke our event. Right, so same code that we did in page one constructor. We're just calling it in the button click event. And if I run this program, you can see it. There it is, called from the page one constructor. And whenever I click, the event is fired again, and we see our alert box. Really quick, something I forgot to mention earlier. You see here we have my event plus equals new event handler, my event handler. Right, we have our event, delegate, event handler. But you can actually omit the delegate. You can actually go like this, just my event plus equals my event handler, and the code will still work. This is called delegate inference, and basically the compiler behind the scenes knows what the delegate is and is able to make that work. So if you want your code to just look a little bit cleaner, you can make it look like this. Okay, so we've created a very plain event that just uses event handler. And we're just sending object sender and EventArgs E, and EventArgs is empty. You can see here there's nothing within the parentheses. But what if we actually wanted to send some information in our EventArgs? In that case, you would need to create your own custom EventArgs. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's go ahead and create a new class. We'll call it order processed event args and click add. So these will be event args for, let's say our event is like an order was processed, right? So we have like a customer was buying a certain quantity of something. We'll say that's what these are for. So let's go ahead and let me paste in my code. And you notice it's pretty simple. We just have three properties: order ID, customer email, and total amount. And you can see here in the constructor, we just send in those three properties and then assign them over here. Okay, so that's done. Let's go back to page1.cs. And so we have public event, event handler, my event. And we're going to do event handler order processed EventArgs. And we'll notice we've got some errors down here that we need to fix now that I've changed that. Real quick, let me go ahead and talk about this. So this is event handler EventArgs delegate. So you notice this is actually a generic, right? EventArgs. And you haven't heard of generics. All you need to know for now is that the T basically means replace it with a custom type, right? So in this case, our type is the order processed EventArgs. And so you notice public delegate void, right? So it still returns void. Event handler and EventArgs. Object sender EventArgs E, where EventArgs allows restaurant. So our parameters here are object sender, just like before, and EventArgs E. So EventArgs means it is our custom EventArgs, right? And our EventArgs, you will recall, our EventArgs have order ID, customer email, and total amount. So through the EventArgs, we're going to be sending 3 pieces of information, essentially. All right, so let me go ahead and fix this. My event plus equals my event handler. You notice no overload for my event handler matches delegate. Event handler order processed EventArgs, right? So it's complaining about this order processed EventArgs. So our event handler has object sender, EventArgs E, and this is the issue. This needs to be order processed EventArgs. When we evoke the event, then instead of sending it empty EventArgs, we will send it order processed EventArgs. So let me just copy that in. Right, so order processed EventArgs, and then for the parameters, I'm just sending in 100 test@emo.com and 20, which will correspond to the 100 is the order ID, customer email is test@email.com, and 20 is the total amount. Okay, so let's see if this works. Build errors. What did I miss? Oh, that's right, because we invoke it on page 1, and then we also invoke it in the button click. So let me just copy this code. And run that. It says hello, and if I click the button, it says hello. So you notice it's still saying hello, and that's because I didn't actually change my code here, right? It just says alert box that show hello. But now that I have these order processed EventArgs, we can actually do some stuff with them. So let's delete that. Let's do e dot, and you'll see we have our customer email, order ID, and we should have total amount. So let's see. E.customer email ordered product number, and then we'll have our E dot order ID, and we'll have the amount. Let me make this bigger so you can see the full line of code here. And this would be E dot, so not customer email, not order ID, total amount. There we go. Okay, so let's try this. Test email.com, ordered product 100, amount 20, and you'll see I still get the same message if I click on the button. And because I'm calling it two different places, or sorry, because I'm invoking it in two different places, I could do different messages if I wanted, right? I'm sending in different information. So let's say the first time it's invoked when page 1 is called, it'll be order 1, test 1 at email.com, and they ordered 10, and then we'll leave the button click the same. So now if I run this, right, test 1 ordered product number 1, amount 10, and then if I click again, ordered product 100, amount 20. Okay, so that's a very simple example of how to create your own custom event args. Another way we can use delegates is with the action of tDelegate. We talked before about a delegate being a way to connect the event and the event handler. Another way to think of a delegate is as a function pointer. That is, it points to a function. You can then use the delegate to call that function indirectly. And we can see this with the action of tDelegate. So here's the documentation. So action of tDelegate, note it says it encapsulates a method that has a single parameter and does not return a value. Right? So encapsulates a method, we can point to a method, essentially tell it call this method, and that method must have a single parameter, and that method must not return a value. Note that if you want that method to have more parameters, you can, right? We have action of t1, t2, action of t1, t2, t3, and so on. And if you want that method to return something, you would use func. Here it is, func t result, right? So encapsulates a method that has no parameters and returns a value. Func t result encapsulates a method that has one parameter and returns a value, and so on. But we're going to go ahead and stick with action. Okay, so let's create some code. So we can create an action very simply. Action, string my action. There we go. Using system. There we go. So that creates our action, pretty simple. And our action takes one parameter of type string, and it doesn't return anything. So let's create some methods. So here I have two methods. We have showString that takes a string and just shows that string in an alert box. And we have showFancyString, which takes a string and shows it in an alert box, but with stars before and after. So all we can do here is just say simply my action equals, and we'll do showFancyString. And then we can call the action my action. And remember, it takes a string, so we'll just send it the string hello. Let's go ahead and run that. And it says hello. And you can see it's calling showFancyString because we've got the stars before and after. Okay. We could also do my action equals showString, and that would just show hello. Another thing you can do here is instead of setting it equal to a function, we can just create our own function. So here we would put the parentheses, which shows the parameters. In this case, one parameter, a string. I can call it whatever I want. Just to show that I can call it something other than S, we'll call it O. And then we have our arrow operator. Think of this as an arrow that shoots our parameter over into our method so we can do something with it. And then we have our method, which we'll just do alert box dot show. I don't know, what should I do to my string? We'll do O plus our string. So this is the code of our method. And so now if I call this here, hello. Right, so it's calling this here. We can actually make this even a little bit simpler. Because it's only one line of code, we don't need the curly braces. So you can go ahead and do that. And I'll run it again to prove that it works. And there we go. All right, so that's a quick introduction to action. So we've seen events, we've seen delegates. We haven't used delegates directly, but that's okay. It's not common to use them directly. Usually you just kind of see them working behind the scenes, like in how they make events and actions work. So we've seen events, we've seen actions, and now we're going to go ahead and create a Wisej sample that shows how you might actually use events and actions in an actual more complex application.